I discovered that loyalty was just a mirage, a convenient excuse until something better came along. My name is Tyler Hudson, and I'm 34 years old. Each morning, I wake before sunrise and spend 15 minutes staring at the ceiling, rehearsing what I'll say when I finally confront her. I once believed marriage was built on shared struggle and honest work. For 5 years, I spent 12-hour days at my garage, hands cracked from engine grease and determination, while my wife, Leah Hudson, called my ambition embarrassingly small. Her mother, Doreen, encouraged her discontent, whispering that I lacked vision. Edwin Vale, the finance manager with imported suits, offered her what she called stability, what I call an escape. When she packed her bags, her wedding ring already off, I realized our entire life together had been weighed, measured, and deemed insufficient for her standards. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. But let me start from the beginning. I pulled into our driveway just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across our small ranch-style home. My truck's engine made that familiar knock, something I'd been meaning to fix for weeks but hadn't found the time. 12 hours at the garage had left me bone-tired with the day's work etched into my hands in stubborn black lines that never fully washed away. The porch light wasn't on. Leah usually turned it on when I worked late. I shoved my key into the lock and pushed the door open. The kitchen light hummed overhead, that fluorescent buzz that always drove Leah crazy. She stood by the sink, arms folded across her chest, her face a mask I couldn't read. A large suitcase rested against the wall behind her. "You're leaving?" The words came out before I could stop them, my throat suddenly dry. Leah's eyes met mine, then drifted to the grease stains on my work shirt. "I can't do this anymore, Tyler. Living paycheck to paycheck, wondering if we'll make rent next month." "We've been doing fine," I said, crossing to the refrigerator more out of habit than hunger. "The garage is picking up. That fleet contract I told you about. You've been saying that for 3 years," she cut in, her voice flat. 3 years of almost and soon and just wait. I'm tired of waiting. Upstairs I could hear the soft creak of my mother's bed. Mom had moved in with us after Dad died, her health not good enough for her to live alone. She was probably resting, unaware that my marriage was splintering apart directly below her bedroom. "Where are you going?" I asked, closing the refrigerator without taking anything out. Leah brushed her blonde hair behind her ear, a gesture I once found endearing. "I've met someone. Edwin Vale. He's a finance manager at Meridian Trust." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "You've met someone. He understands my goals, Tyler. He knows what it means to plan for the future instead of just scrambling to survive the present." I wiped my hands on my jeans, leaving faint smudges. "And what about our vows? What about for better or worse?" "This is the worse," she said, gesturing around our modest kitchen with its outdated appliances and worn linoleum. "And it's not getting better." Her words felt like a physical blow. I'd spent every day for the past 5 years trying to build something solid for us. Working overtime, taking side jobs, saving where we could. All while she complained about the house being too small, the furniture too cheap. "So you're just walking away?" My voice sounded strange in my ears. "I've written down some next steps," she said, sliding a folded piece of paper across the counter. "For the divorce. It doesn't have to be ugly, Tyler. Doesn't have to be ugly?" I could feel heat rising in my chest. "You're leaving me for some guy in a suit and you think there's a version of this that isn't ugly?" Leah sighed, as if I was being unreasonable. "This isn't sudden. You had to have seen this coming." That's when I realized she'd been planning this for weeks, maybe months. While I was working myself to exhaustion trying to provide for us, she'd been measuring the distance between our life and the one she thought she deserved. "My mother was right about you," she added, grabbing the handle of her suitcase. "You chose smallness. You could have been more if you wanted." I watched her walk to the door, her heels clicking against the floor. She paused with her hand on the knob. "I'll call you tomorrow about arranging to get the rest of my things." Then she was gone, leaving behind only the faint scent of her expensive perfume, a Christmas gift I'd saved 3 months to buy her. Hours later, I sat alone on our couch, surrounded by the month's bills, the mortgage, the electric, Mom's medications. My gaze fell to my hands, still stained with the day's work. In the silent house, I could hear the wall clock ticking, marking time in a life suddenly unrecognizable. "I'm done," I whispered to the empty room, flexing my stained fingers, done being the only one holding the line. The next morning hit like a hangover, though I hadn't touched a drop. I'd barely slept, watching the ceiling fan rotate until dawn crept through the blinds. By 7, I was dressed and downing coffee while Mom shuffled into the kitchen, her slippers whispering across the floor. "You're up early," she said, eyeing me with concern. I nodded toward the empty spot where Leah's car should have been. She left. Mom's face fell. "Oh, Tyler." She reached for my hand across the table. "What happened?" "She found someone better," I said, the words still acid on my tongue. "Someone with a bigger paycheck." Mom squeezed my fingers. "You need to talk to Monica Patel. Janice next door used her for her son's divorce. She's good, Tyler. Won't let anyone take advantage." By 9, I was sitting in a modest office downtown, watching Monica Patel review the divorce petition Leah had couriered over first thing this morning. Her efficiency was almost cruel. "Well," Monica said, glancing up from the paperwork, "your wife doesn't waste time, does she?" "Ex-wife," I corrected, the new title still strange in my mouth. Monica nodded, marking something with a red pen. "She's seeking spousal support and," she frowned, "partial ownership of your bungalow, the one you share with your mother. It's actually in my mom's name. We've lived there since my dad died." "That's good," Monica said, making another note. "Very good, actually." We spent the next hour going through Leah's demands. When we finished, Monica leaned back in her chair. "First mediation is tomorrow. I know it's fast, but I think we should get ahead of this." "Tomorrow? I've got the garage. Take the day off. This is more important than an oil change." I almost smiled. "Fair enough." The next morning, the conference room at Monica's office felt too small when Leah walked in with her lawyer and her mother Doreen in tow. Doreen wore pearls and a cream blouse that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Her eyes swept over me like I was something stuck to her shoe. "Tyler." Leah nodded coolly, settling into a chair across from me. "Let's get started," Monica said. "All business. We've reviewed your petition and have several points of contention." Leah's lawyer, a sleek man in an expensive suit, smiled thinly. "My client has been more than reasonable. Your client is seeking assets that aren't hers to claim," Monica countered. Leah leaned forward. "I carried that marriage financially for years. I deserve compensation." I couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. "Carried it? With what? Your retail job that barely covered groceries while I worked 60-hour weeks?" "You worked on cars," Doreen interjected, her voice dripping with disdain. "Hardly the stable career my daughter deserved." "Mom," Leah warned, but Doreen wasn't finished. "A real provider would have found a way to give her the life she deserved. Instead, you kept her in that tiny bungalow with your mother." Monica raised a hand. "Mrs. Wilcox, with all due respect, the property in question is solely owned by Mona Hudson. It's not marital property and not subject to division." "That's a technicality," Leah's lawyer argued. "That's the law," Monica replied smoothly. Doreen sniffed. "Well, no wonder he wouldn't put it in both their names. Always planning his escape." Something in me snapped. I never planned to escape anything. I was building something. A life. A business. A future. I worked myself to the bone while Leah complained that what I provided wasn't enough. "It wasn't," Leah said quietly. "Then you should have said so instead of sneaking around behind my back." My voice was steady but tight. "You want to talk about character? About providing? I never once broke a promise to you. Can you say the same?" The room fell silent. Even Doreen looked momentarily disarmed. "The house stays with my mother," I continued. "It was never part of our marital assets, and as for support, I built that garage from nothing. You contributed exactly 0 to its success." By late afternoon, Monica was walking me to my truck, a light rain beginning to fall. "The good news is the house is safe. Your mother's name on the deed protects it. And the bad news? She's going to press harder on other fronts. Spousal support, division of your tools, possibly even a percentage of the garage's future earnings." I unlocked my truck, feeling the weight of it all pressing down. So what now? Now we fight smart, not angry. She handed me her card. Call me anytime. The drive home was a blur of raindrops and windshield wipers. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached. If Leah wanted to strip me down to nothing, she'd have to fight for every scrap. I wouldn't roll over. Not for her, not for Doreen, not for anyone. Mom was waiting when I got home, worry etched across her face. I sat beside her on the couch, the same one where Dad used to fall asleep watching baseball games. The house is safe, I told her, watching relief flood her features. I promise, Mom. No matter what else happens, I'll make sure you keep your home. She patted my cheek the way she used to when I was a kid. Our home, Tyler. Ours. I woke up before my alarm the next morning, my mind already racing. The digital clock read 4:47 a.m., barely enough sleep to function, but rest wasn't a luxury I could afford anymore. I stared at the ceiling of my childhood bedroom, listening to the familiar creaks of Mom's house settling around me. My phone buzzed with a text from Monica. Need financial statements by Friday. Another expense. Another hour I needed to work. I showered quickly, the hot water doing little to ease the knot between my shoulders. Mom was already in the kitchen when I came down, stirring something at the stove despite the early hour. You don't have to be up, Mom, I said, pouring coffee into my thermos. I know that. She slid a plate of eggs toward me. Eat something. I wolfed down breakfast, grateful but distracted. I'm expanding my hours at the garage, taking mobile calls too. Mobile calls? She frowned. That's a lot of driving. It's a lot of money, I corrected her. And I need it for Monica's retainer. Mom didn't argue. She just nodded and wrapped a sandwich for me to take. That was her way, quiet support, no questions asked. I wondered if Leah ever really understood that kind of loyalty. The garage was cold when I opened up earlier than usual. I flipped the lights, turned on the ancient space heater, and got to work on Mrs. Patterson's Buick before my regular hours even started. By 7, I had 2 more appointments booked, one at the garage, another at some factory parking lot where a supervisor's car wouldn't start. Around 10, the bell above the door jingled. I rolled out from under a Honda to find Raymark Santos standing there, hands in the pockets of his work jacket. Hey, stranger, he said, offering a hand to pull me up. Raymark had been one of my steadiest fleet clients before he lost his management position during downsizing. He oversaw municipal vehicles for 3 counties, and we developed a decent friendship over diagnostic tests and maintenance schedules. Heard about the divorce, he said, cutting straight to it. That's rough, man. I wiped grease from my hands. Yeah, well, life happens. You working alone these days? I nodded. Can't afford help right now. Actually taking mobile jobs to cover legal fees. Raymark leaned against the workbench. How would you feel about a side project? Something that might make both our lives better? I'm listening. He pulled out his phone, showing me spreadsheets and maintenance logs. Remember how I was always tracking repair patterns? I've been developing this idea. An app that predicts mechanical failures in municipal fleets before they happen. I raised an eyebrow. Predictive maintenance? Exactly. His eyes lit up. Cities waste thousands on emergency repairs and vehicle downtime. But with your diagnostic experience and my data models, we could build something that flags issues before they become breakdowns. For the first time in weeks, I felt something besides anger or exhaustion. Interest. Possibility. I don't know anything about building apps, I admitted. I know enough to get started, Raymark said. What I need is your brain, the patterns you recognize, the sounds and symptoms you catch before anyone else. The phone in my pocket buzzed again, probably another bill or legal notice. But here was Raymark, offering something besides problems to solve. I don't have much spare time, I warned. Neither do I. But what else are we going to do with our nights? Drink? I had to laugh at that. Fair point. Between customers, Raymark and I cleared space in my cramped back office. We pinned diagrams to the wall, mapped out common failure points in fleet vehicles, and started building a database of symptoms and solutions. By closing time, we had the skeleton of something that felt real. We need a name, Raymark said, pouring us both another cup of coffee as night settled outside. I stared at the circuit diagram we'd been drafting. Axle watch, I said suddenly. Axle watch. He repeated, testing it out. I like it. Sounds trustworthy. For the next week, I lived in perpetual motion. Up at dawn for the garage, court documents during lunch breaks, customer calls until dinner, then code and planning with Raymark until midnight or later. Mom quietly left plates of food outside the garage door, never interrupting but making sure I didn't run on empty. Tonight was no different. The clock had just struck midnight when Raymark stretched and announced he needed to get home. We're close, he said, nodding at the screen where our prototype was taking shape. Really close. After he left, I stayed, hunched over the keyboard, finalizing the upload of our first working version. The garage was silent except for the hum of the computer and the occasional ping of cooling metal. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the chill, partly from concentration, partly from hope. I clicked upload and watched the progress bar inch forward. This wasn't just code or a business idea. It was a lifeline, a way forward that had nothing to do with what I'd lost and everything to do with what I could still build. The light bulb above me flickered, threatening to go out before steadying again. I took it as a sign. I could have collapsed under the weight of Leah's betrayal, let it crush everything I'd worked for. Instead, I was here, creating something new from the wreckage. The upload completed. Axle Watch was alive. 3 months of 18-hour days and half-eaten meals later, I was hunched over my laptop in the garage when the email notification chimed. Raymark and I had sent our Axle Watch demo to 7 county maintenance departments across the state. Most hadn't bothered responding. I clicked open the message, scanning quickly, then read it again more slowly. Holy shit, I whispered. My fingers fumbled for my phone. Raymark answered on the second ring. Tell me it's good news, he said, his voice rough with sleep. It was nearly midnight. Westridge County wants a 6-month contract. Full implementation across their fleet. My voice didn't sound like my own. They're offering $40,000. The silence on the other end stretched for 3 heartbeats. Are you serious? Raymark finally managed. Dead serious. They were impressed with the diagnostic algorithms, said it could save them at least 20% on maintenance costs. I'll be there in 15 minutes. I hung up and just sat there staring at the email. $40,000. Not a fortune, but enough to prove we weren't crazy. Enough to keep going. By the time Raymark's truck pulled into the driveway, I'd already ordered Chinese takeout. He burst through the side door, his usual calm replaced with barely contained excitement. Show me, he demanded. I turned the laptop his way. As he read, his face broke into a grin that matched the one I couldn't suppress. We did it, he said softly. We actually did it. The delivery guy arrived 20 minutes later with enough food for 4 people. We cleared space on my workbench, using overturned milk crates as chairs. I opened 2 beers from the mini fridge, and we clinked bottles over containers of Kung Pao chicken and beef with broccoli. To Axle Watch, Raymark said. May this be the first of many. To Axle Watch, I echoed. The side door creaked open and Mom appeared, wrapped in her faded blue robe. I heard voices. Everything okay? I couldn't stop smiling. We got a contract, Mom. Westridge County, our first real client. Her eyes widened, then crinkled at the corners. Well, now that calls for a picture. She disappeared back into the house, returning with her ancient digital camera. Mom, come on. We're just eating takeout in a garage. She waved away my protest. This is important. Someday you'll want to remember exactly how it felt when things started to turn around. She held up the camera as Raymark and I clinked bottles again, grinning like idiots among our half-eaten food and scattered papers. There, she said, checking the small screen. Perfect. I'm proud of you boys. She squeezed my shoulder. It's starting to feel stable again, isn't it? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Mom hadn't looked this at ease since before Leah left. After Mom went back inside and Raymark finally headed home, I stayed in the garage, sorting through implementation notes, riding the high of our first win. Then my phone buzzed with a text. Monica Patel. Judge Sanders pushed back hearing again. Leah's counsel claiming more discovery needed on your changing financial circumstances. Call me tomorrow. The victory buzz faded. 3 months in, and the divorce was still dragging on. Leah had switched attorneys twice, each one more aggressive than the last. Every time we made progress with Axel Watch, there'd be another motion, another demand for financial disclosure. I rubbed my eyes, gritty with exhaustion. The clock on the wall read 2:17 a.m. I needed to be up in 4 hours to meet our software developer, then handle regular garage clients all afternoon. My phone buzzed again. Monica Patel. Her attorney also filed increased support claim based on anticipated income. Fighting it. I dropped my head into my hands. Leah wanted a piece of whatever I might earn, not just what I had when she left. 3 days later, I was back at the garage after another marathon work session when Monica called. "Good news," she said without preamble. "Judge denied their motion about the house. Your mother's name on the deed and her continuous residence there made it an easy call." I leaned against my workbench. What about the rest? Still negotiating. But this was a big win, Tyler. They can't touch your mother's home. After we hung up, I stepped outside. The evening air felt cool against my face after hours in the stuffy garage. Above me, the streetlight hummed, casting a yellow glow that made long shadows of the tools and parts scattered across the driveway. One battle won. The house was safe. Mom was safe. But standing there under that buzzing light, victory tasted hollow. The contract, the business, even keeping the house. It all felt defensive, reactive. I was still living in response to Leah's betrayal, still fighting the war she'd started. I looked back at the garage where our fledgling company was taking shape. Even this, my greatest achievement in months, carried her fingerprints. Would I have pushed this hard without the need to prove her wrong? Success should feel better than this, I thought. But maybe that comes later, when winning isn't just about not losing. 3 years can change everything. What started as desperation in a cramped garage transformed into something neither Raymark nor I could have imagined. Each new contract felt like validation. Every municipal fleet that signed with Axel Watch turned another page in a story that had nothing to do with Leah anymore. Small towns became mid-sized cities. One county became 3, then 7. By our 3rd year, we were operating statewide with 12 employees and an actual office downtown. The pain that once kept me up at night had been converted into profit, strategy, and a future I'd built without her. I still drove my old pickup most days. Habit and practicality more than anything else. But on a crisp Friday morning, I walked into a dealership and did something just for me. "You sure about this?" the salesman asked as I signed the final papers. I nodded. More sure than I've been about anything in a long time. The red Ferrari 458 wasn't new, 3 years old with reasonable mileage, but it gleamed under the showroom lights like a promise fulfilled. I could have bought it outright, but having it in the garage would be enough. Not as a status symbol, but as proof. Proof that I had survived. Proof that I'd been right about my own worth all along. When I pulled it into our driveway that evening, Raymark was waiting, shaking his head with a wide grin. "About damn time," he said, walking around the car with appreciative eyes. "I was starting to think you'd never spend a dime on yourself." "Just felt right," I replied, running my hand along the hood. "Doesn't make business sense at all." "That's exactly why it makes sense," Raymark countered. "Some things aren't about the balance sheet." Mom appeared at the kitchen door, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her eyes widened at the sight of the car, but her expression wasn't shocked, just proud. "It's beautiful, Tyler," she said softly. "Too much?" I asked. She shook her head. "You earned it. Every bit." The next afternoon, I took the Ferrari out for a real drive. The engine responded to the slightest touch, like it was reading my mind instead of my hands. I cruised through downtown, windows down, enjoying the rare feeling of doing something without purpose or obligation. Just living. At a red light near Hampton Street, I stopped beside the high-end salon where Leah used to get her hair done. The one with the gold lettering and unnecessary accent marks. I wasn't thinking about her. Hadn't thought about her in weeks. But as the universe likes its ironies, the glass door swung open and there she was. Leah stepped onto the sidewalk, phone in hand, hair freshly styled. She looked thinner than I remembered, her face a little sharper. For a moment she didn't notice me, just another car at a stoplight. Then her eyes drifted over. caught on the Ferrari's logo, and traveled up to my face. The recognition hit her like a physical blow. She froze, mouth slightly open, phone clutched against her chest. I watched the emotions cross her face in rapid succession: disbelief, then envy, and finally, a desperate attempt to recalibrate. I rolled down the window. The polite thing would have been to pretend I hadn't seen her. "Tyler?" Her voice was softer than I remembered. "You look different." "Yeah," I said. "Turns out poverty washes off." Her lip trembled. "I didn't know you didn't care," I cut in. "And now you do." She stepped closer, reaching out a hand like we were old friends. "Maybe we could talk." The light turned green. I looked straight ahead. "You left me because I was poor. Now you just look broke." Her mouth opened like she wanted to argue, but her eyes darted to the car's logo, calculating instead of crying. I didn't wait for her response. The engine hummed as I pulled away, watching her shrink in my rearview mirror until she was just a small figure on the sidewalk, still clutching her phone. I didn't look back again. Didn't need to. Standing alone on the corner, Leia watched the Ferrari disappear down the street. The shock on her face hardened into something uglier. If Tyler could afford that car, what else was he hiding? What else had he kept from her during their divorce? Her fingers tightened around her phone, scrolling quickly through contacts until she found the number she needed. "Hello, Benson Legal Associates. This is Leah Hudson. I need to speak with Mr. Benson about reopening my divorce settlement. Today, if possible." 1 week later, I was sorting through invoices when our office assistant knocked on my door. "Package for you," she said, sliding a thick manila envelope across my desk. "Needs a signature." I scribbled my name on the delivery form without much thought. We got parts deliveries all the time. Documentation for municipal contracts, software updates, nothing unusual. Until I tore it open. The letterhead hit me first: Benson Legal Associates. Then the bold type: Notice of motion to reopen divorce settlement. My eyes scanned down the page, catching phrases like fraudulent concealment of assets and intentional misrepresentation of financial status. My blood went cold. Raymark walked in with coffee in hand, mid-sentence about our latest software patch. "Hey, the county's fleet manager loved the new..." He stopped when he saw my face. "What's wrong?" I handed him the top sheet. His eyes widened as he read. "This is insane," he said. "Axle Watch didn't even exist during your divorce." "Doesn't matter." I flipped through the pages. "They're freezing my accounts pending investigation, all of them, including the business ones." Raymark set his mug down hard enough that coffee sloshed over the side. "They can't do that. We have payroll in 3 days." I leaned back in my chair, the room suddenly airless. Apparently they can. That morning at breakfast, Mom had studied my face across the table, her brow furrowed with concern. "You look pale," she'd said. "Is something wrong?" I'd shrugged it off. Just some contract details to iron out. She hadn't believed me. I could tell by the way she lingered in the doorway as I left. But she hadn't pushed. That quiet presence, never demanding, but always there, was her way. I wished I'd told her the truth now. She'd survived worse than this. I called Monica Patel immediately. Her secretary put me through right away. "I'll be there in an hour," Monica said after I explained. "Don't respond to anything. Don't sign anything. And Tyler, breathe." The hour crawled. I paced between my office and the workroom, unable to focus on anything besides the ticking clock. Our lead developer asked me a question about database architecture, and I realized I hadn't heard a word she said. Monica arrived at 2:30 sharp, her briefcase in hand and calm determination on her face. "Let me see everything," she said, settling into a chair across from my desk. I pushed the papers toward her and she read in silence, occasionally making notes on her legal pad. "This is desperate," she finally said, "and poorly timed." "They've frozen our accounts," I reminded her. "We won't make payroll." "Not all your accounts," Monica corrected. "Personal ones only, not corporate. They've overreached, which gives us leverage." She tapped her pen against the paper. "We'll need documentation showing when Axle Watch was founded. Every contract, every bank deposit, every business filing. I have all of that." "Good." And we'll need a clear timeline of your divorce proceedings. She met my gaze. This isn't about hidden assets, Tyler. This is about punishing success she didn't expect. Later that night, long after everyone had gone home, I sat alone in the office crunching numbers. If we shifted funds from our emergency reserves, we could cover payroll. But that would leave us exposed if anything else went wrong. 12 employees now depended on me. 12 families. The weight of it pressed on my chest like an engine block. My mind drifted back to that red light, to Leia's face when she first saw me in the Ferrari. There'd been shock there, yes, but something else too. Something calculating. Something hungry. And suddenly I understood. That moment wasn't coincidence, it was catalyst. Seeing me successful hadn't awakened regret. It had awakened greed. The Ferrari wasn't just a car to her. It was proof that she'd missed out on something valuable. And if there was one thing Leia couldn't stand, it was losing a game she thought she'd already won. I shut my laptop, plunging the office into darkness except for the dim glow of the monitor. The shadows made the room feel cavernous, empty in a way that matched the hollow feeling in my chest. She couldn't stand losing, I muttered to the empty room. So she's trying to rewrite the story. The monitor's blue light cast harsh shadows across my face. I wasn't afraid anymore, just resolute. This wouldn't be like last time. I wouldn't be defending scraps. This time, I had something worth fighting for. Monica arrived early the next morning, balancing a cardboard tray with 4 coffees in one hand and her leather briefcase in the other. The sky was still the dusky blue of pre-dawn when she knocked on the garage door. I'd been there since 4 a.m., too wired to sleep. "You look like you haven't slept," she said, handing me a cup. "Drink this, we have work to do." I took a sip of the scalding coffee. I made copies of everything I could think of. Good start. She surveyed the workspace. But we need more than copies. We need irrefutable evidence with timestamps, contracts, incorporation documents, anything that proves Axel Watch formed after your divorce was finalized. Raymark arrived 20 minutes later, rubbing sleep from his eyes. I handed him the coffee Monica had brought, and he nodded gratefully. "I'm going to need you both focused," Monica said, spreading folders across our makeshift conference table. "Tyler, I need every document related to Axel Watch's founding. Business license, articles of incorporation, first bank statement, first client contract, everything." I pulled out a flash drive. "It's all here. The business didn't exist until 6 months after the divorce was final. And I need proof of that timing," Monica replied. "Courts don't care about what we know, they care about what we can prove." We spent the morning sorting through digital files and paper records. Monica created a timeline on a whiteboard, meticulously marking each critical date. The garage slowly transformed into a war room, with documents spread across every available surface. "Wait," Raymark said around noon, scrolling through his phone. "I just remembered something." We both looked up. That county event last year, the one where they announced the fleet maintenance contract, there were photos in the local paper. He turned his phone toward us. "Look who's in the background." The image showed a crowded reception room, and there in the corner, unmistakable even at a distance, stood Leia, with her arm linked through Edwin's. The date stamp on the article was from the same month she'd claimed financial hardship in her initial filings. Monica's eyes lit up. "Send me that, now." "Why? What does it prove?" I asked. "It proves she wasn't exactly destitute when she claimed to be." Monica made a note. "It proves she had support from Edwin while claiming abandonment. It's a small thing, but small things add up to reasonable doubt." By late afternoon, we had assembled a mountain of evidence. Bank statements showing Axel Watch's first deposit 6 months after the divorce. Articles of incorporation dated 8 months after. The first client contract signed nearly a year later. "This is good," Monica said, tapping a finger against her legal pad. "But we need to be thorough. They're going to claim you were planning this during the marriage." "We weren't even thinking about Axel Watch then," Raymark insisted. "I know that. You know that. But we need the court to know that." Monica turned to me. "Do you have any emails or messages from when you first discussed the business idea?" I nodded. "Should be in my archive." The sun was setting when Mom appeared at the door with 3 takeout containers. "You all need to eat," she said simply. We cleared a space on the table and she set down the food. "How's it going?" "We're building a case," I said. She smiled, a small, knowing curve of her lips. "Truth doesn't need much polish, does it?" "No, ma'am," Monica agreed. "But it does need organization." Mom squeezed my shoulder before leaving. That small gesture carried more support than 1,000 words. We worked well into the night. My eyes burned from staring at screens and documents. Around 11, Raymark finally called it quits, promising to return early the next day. After he left, I sat at my desk reading through the subpoena paperwork one more time. The lamp cast a yellow circle on the pages, illuminating Leah's claims in harsh relief. Each accusation felt like a personal insult, not just to my finances, but to my character. "Justice won't need revenge," I whispered to the empty room. "It just needs facts." Monica was still typing at her laptop, her fingers moving with practiced precision. At midnight exactly, she hit the final key with an audible click. "It's done," she said. "I've just submitted our brief to the court." That keystroke felt momentous somehow, like the starting bell of a fight I hadn't asked for, but was determined to win. The county courthouse mediation room felt too small the next morning. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everyone in that sickly institutional glow that makes even healthy people look ill. I'd been up since 5, rehearsing facts with Monica, reminding myself to breathe. "Remember," Monica whispered as we waited, "they're counting on emotion. We're counting on evidence." The door opened at exactly 9. Leah walked in first. Designer blouse, hair freshly styled, that familiar perfume trailing behind her. The same one I'd bought her for Christmas 3 years ago. I wondered if she wore it deliberately, some kind of psychological warfare. Doreen followed, chin high, eyes sweeping the room like she was inspecting a questionable hotel. They took their seats across from us. Leah's lawyer, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, arranged his folders with exaggerated precision. The mediator, a retired judge named Callahan, entered last. "Good morning," he said, scanning the room. "Let's try to keep this productive." Leah's lawyer cleared his throat. "My client contends that Mr. Hudson deliberately concealed business assets during divorce proceedings. We have reason to believe Axle Watch Technologies was in development well before separation." Monica remained perfectly still beside me. We'd prepared for this. "Ms. Hudson," Callahan turned to Leah, "would you like to explain your position?" Leah folded her hands on the table. "Tyler had this idea for years. He was always talking about fleet management software with Raymark. It was part of our marriage. The long hours in the garage, the coding, and now he's pretending it happened after we split." Her voice had that practiced steadiness I remembered from when she'd rehearsed complaints. "He hid Axle Watch because he didn't want me to have what I deserved." I felt my jaw tighten but kept my face neutral. "Mr. Hudson?" Callahan looked my way. "Axle Watch didn't exist during our marriage," I said simply. "Not even as a concept." I slid a folder across the table. Monica had organized everything chronologically: bank statements, incorporation documents, time-stamped emails between Raymark and me showing the first mention of the business idea came 2 months after the divorce was final. "You'll see the first business filing was made 6 months after our divorce was finalized," I continued. "The first client contract was signed 3 months after that." Leah's eyes darted over the documents. Something in her expression flickered, the first crack in her certainty. "He could have backdated these," Doreen interjected. Monica smiled thinly. "The Secretary of State's office and the IRS would disagree. These filings are public record." Leah's lawyer flipped through our evidence with growing discomfort. "Furthermore," Monica added, sliding another folder forward, "we have evidence that Ms. Hudson was receiving regular financial support from Mr. Edwin Vale during the period when she claimed financial hardship." This was our ace. Monica had subpoenaed bank records showing monthly transfers from Edwin to Leah, starting 3 weeks before she left me, continuing through the divorce proceedings. Doreen's face went pale. Leah's fingers curled around her pen so tightly I thought it might snap. "This is irrelevant," Leah's lawyer tried. "It's entirely relevant," Monica countered. "Ms. Hudson claimed abandonment and financial distress while receiving substantial support from a third party. She misrepresented her situation to the court. The mediator's eyebrows rose as he examined the bank statements. The room went quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning. Leah suddenly changed tactics, her voice softening. "Tyler," she said, looking directly at me for the first time. "Maybe we've both made mistakes. We could talk about this privately. Remember what we had?" The request hung in the air, so unexpected it momentarily knocked me off balance. But only for a moment. "No, Leah." I kept my voice even. "You don't get to burn the field and then ask for the harvest." Doreen made a noise like she'd been pinched. "That's rather harsh," Leah's lawyer commented. "It's rather honest," I replied. Callahan looked between us, something like respect flickering in his eyes. Monica gently placed her hand on the table. "In light of the evidence presented, we'll be requesting dismissal with prejudice and reimbursement of legal fees." Callahan nodded, gathering the papers. "I believe I have everything I need. We'll reconvene for judgment at 2 o'clock. Leah sat motionless, still clutching her pen, as everyone began to rise. The confidence she'd walked in with had evaporated, leaving behind something brittle and uncertain. 1 week later, I sat beside Monica in the courtroom, the polished wood of the gallery bench smooth beneath my hands. Judge Adler adjusted her glasses as she reviewed the final documents. "In the matter of Hudson versus Hudson," she began, her voice echoing in the high-ceilinged room. "Having reviewed all evidence and testimony, this court finds no merit to the plaintiff's claims of hidden assets." I exhaled slowly. Monica's posture remained professional, but I caught the slight upward curve of her mouth. "Furthermore," Judge Adler continued, "I find the plaintiff's allegations to be not merely unsubstantiated but deliberately misleading." She looked directly at Leah, whose shoulders had stiffened. "This court dismisses all claims with prejudice and awards sanctions in the amount of $23,000 to the defendant for legal fees and damages." The gavel struck with finality. Leah's attorney leaned over to whisper something, but she just stared straight ahead. Outside in the corridor, Monica finally relaxed her composure. "I don't throw around the word victory lightly," she said, sliding papers into her briefcase. "But sanctions like this are rare. The judge saw through everything." "Thank you," I said, finding those 2 words wholly inadequate, "for believing me from day one." "You trusted the process," Monica replied. "Most clients want to fight fire with fire. You let the truth be your weapon." She extended her hand. "It was an honor, Tyler." We shook hands, and I realized something had shifted inside me. The knot of anger I'd carried since that first night in the kitchen had finally begun to unravel. The sun was setting as I drove home, casting long shadows across the road. The same streets I'd once driven in desperation now felt different beneath my wheels. Lighter somehow, as if the car itself sensed the weight I'd shed in that courtroom. Mom had prepared dinner. The kitchen smelled of garlic and rosemary, the windows cracked open to let in the evening breeze. Raymark arrived with a bottle of champagne, his booming laugh filling our small dining room. "To justice," he toasted, raising his glass. "And to Tyler, who didn't let the bastards grind him down." "Language," Mom chided, but she was smiling as she clinked her glass against his. Nadine arrived last, bringing homemade bread and quiet warmth. I'd met her 6 months ago when the county expanded their Axle Watch contract. Unlike Leah, Nadine's ambition wasn't tied to appearances or status. She moved through life with purpose, but without Leah's sharp edges. As we sat around the table, I watched Nadine helping Mom serve the food, their easy conversation punctuated by Raymark's stories. The contrast between this moment and the cold silence of my marriage's final days couldn't have been starker. Later, Nadine and I stood on the back porch. The garden was coming alive under Mom's care, the rose bushes budding with promise. "Congratulations," Nadine said softly. "Though that feels like the wrong word." "Why's that?" "Because winning something you never should have had to fight for isn't really winning." She leaned against the railing. "Peace is the real trophy, isn't it?" I looked at her, really looked, and felt something settle in my chest. "Yeah," I said, "I think it is." The following Sunday dawned clear and cool. I took the Ferrari out, not because I needed to go anywhere, but because sometimes movement helps thoughts align. The engine hummed as I navigated familiar streets. past the garage where Axel Watch began, past the courthouse where it almost ended. At that same intersection where Leia had seen me months ago, I slowed. Through the salon window, I could see her working, hair pinned back, focusing intently on a client. She must have sensed something because she glanced up briefly. Our eyes met for half a second before she looked away, pretending absorption in her task. I didn't feel triumph or anger,